So this is my Radeon 9800 Pro All-in-Wonder. This was featured in that 2003 MATX Socket 478 build video that I did. This is a good card, and it's working fine. So we need to do some upgrades to this thing to make sure it stays working, because an unfortunate thing about the Radeon 97, 9800 series cards, they're very well known for dying. And that is mostly heat related. Especially the 9700s were really bad because ATI, for some reason, decided to use a really thick thermal pad instead of paste, and the way their heatsink was designed. If you have a 9700 Pro, any of the old 95, 9700 cards with the original heatsink, don't even turn it on. Just don't even turn it on until you remove the shim, replace everything with that. The 9800s are better. They redesigned the heatsinks, or at least some of the later ones. They added a little thing that comes down to actually make contact with the die, because who knew that was a good idea? The problem is that they're not quite as prone to dying as the 9700s, but they're still pretty well known. You definitely want to repaste these. That is non-negotiable. You need to repaste these cards. Even then, that's still debatably not enough. Now, I think one of the big problems is that these fans, this is just an awkward fan. It spins in a weird way where these blades are a weird way. Normally, a fan would blow down and out. This seems to sort of seem to me like it's sucking air and then pushing it out more this way, which I guess that's maybe beneficial. The problem is that I think there's enough metal here on the heatsink, but there's just not enough airflow over it. And especially if you have this in a tight, cramped case with poor airflow, it's kind of a recipe for disaster with these cards. Now, of course, I've already repasted this. I wouldn't have even dreamed of turning it on without repasting it, just because I was paranoid. Now, for a long time, I've thought about upgrading it with one of these cheap Chinese GPU coolers, which unfortunately they're not that cheap anymore, at least if you buy them on eBay. I know they're still cheaper on like AliExpress, but of course that'll take a while to get to you. This is okay. Obviously there's more surface area going on here and whatnot. There's a couple problems with going with this cooler. This TV tuner is massive and is just it's going to interfere with this, so I'd have to cut most of these excess mounting holes off, because these are the only two that actually matter for mounting it to a 9800. Even still, I'm going to have to do a lot of modifications probably to make sure that this thing mounts properly. But even ignoring that, I'm not the biggest fan of this base plate, because how these coolers are made is it's literally just all these aluminum fins are just crushed extremely tight down here and are held together. So this isn't the smoothest. I'm sure the paste would probably work it out fine. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, that would probably be the better solution. That'd have the benefit of being able to plug into the card and whatnot. But what if we got a little silly? So instead of this puny little fan here, what if we use the stock heatsink that's here? We just put a big old fan on here, and we get more cooling that way. I mean, the logic seems to work out to me. I don't see why putting this... this is a CPU fan. This is a weird, like, 70mm fan. I got this idea from Vogons, because I posted about this on Vogons. One guy said this would probably be okay, that it'd be worth the effort to cut it all off, but then someone else threw this idea out there, which I'm surprised I didn't think of just putting a bigger fan on it. He suggested an 80mm fan, which would be quite big. This actually fits very nicely on the card. Honestly, if the heatsink went up a little bit farther, it would look almost like it was made for it. Now, this will unfortunately be very loud if we go down this route, but I think it's worth trying, since this should be very reversible, considering it's just screwing into the metal And we can always put the original fan right back in if I change my mind or something. I get tired of this thing being too loud, because this thing moves some serious airflow. Like, we have to power this off the motherboard. I wouldn't trust trying to adapt it to the card's header. This is a 12-volt fan that spins at 0.24 amps. I know that doesn't really sound like much, but that's a decent amount for a fan. So I think this is the route I'm gonna go, at least for now. I'm not ruling this out. Maybe one day I'll still end up putting this on here. Maybe I get a different 9800 or something like that. I can always put this on there. But yeah, I actually gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with the fan on this. This is relatively quiet. Okay, this is probably the better option, but just this not being the smoothest, and even with lapping it, I don't think it'll ever be super smooth. I don't know, it just weirds me out a little bit. I don't feel super comfortable putting it on here. Besides, if we put this on here, I don't have to repaste the card, which means I don't have to worry about trying to get these plastic push pins out, which is always a little nerve-wracking because you can accidentally scratch traces on the PCB. Now, there's one other failure point on these cards, and this kind of applies to a lot of older graphics cards from back then, and that's BGA RAM failure. Just the BGA connections on the RAM cracking with heat and stress, and that, you know, killing your card. Of course, that can be fixed. You can reflow it, and usually you can bring it back to life. It's not super common that the actual chip goes bad. It's usually the solder joints. To help address that, help cut down on the heat, I got some copper RAM heat sinks. I got 8 of them because, well, there are 8 RAM chips. Now, I think they kind of screwed up. These are supposed to have thermal adhesive tape on them, and they just don't. Hey, so I'm an idiot. I found this out after filming. They just don't pre-apply the tape for some reason. Yeah, they put the... Apparently they put the thermal tape in here. I feel kind of stupid now, but yeah. I guess if you buy these, then they do give you tape. Don't know if it's any good, but yeah, they do give it to you. Just figured that was worth pointing out. But yeah, we got 8 little copper heat sinks. It's not a ton. I probably could have got bigger heat sinks, but they, you know, they have a decent amount of weight to them. Like, one of these is probably a good few grams at least of pure copper, so that's pretty thick. That's got to be at least helping with the heat somewhat. You know, it's better than nothing. Of course, you could epoxy the heat sinks on, which would probably be the best for thermal transfer. It's a nightmare if you ever want to get them off. That would be better for thermal transfer, but I'm just gonna finish their job for them and put my own thermal tape on the heat sinks, which honestly, this stuff is probably better than whatever they would have put on from the factory anyways, so I'm fine with this. So to start with, we're gonna start with the RAM heat sinks. Gonna be pretty simple because these fit very nicely on there. Now that's gonna look nice. Of course, once I straighten it out. There was just a random piece of metal on my table. That's reassuring. I guess that's from my previous messing around. I think the only time I've really used this is for when I did my RX 480 heatsink upgrade. So it's been a while since I've used this. Hopefully I still remember how to do it okay. So I kind of just stick it on, you get it nice and flat. This does unfortunately waste a decent amount of the tape, but I have a huge roll of it, and I don't use it a ton, so I'm okay with doing it like this. So we just get a good amount on there, and then we just cut and trim it down. You just get up nice and close here with the heat sink, so you don't have any ugly overhang. Careful to not put your scissors down on the card. That's generally not a great idea. And there we go, I finished their job for them. So let's go ahead and peel off the backing. And I'm doing the RAM heatsinks first just because even if I did either heatsink, either the fan upgrade or the full-on Chinese heatsink upgrade, it would still be harder to get these on. So I'm putting these on first just to make life a little bit easier. Get that stuck on there. Make sure to not put too much force on it because I don't want to crack the solder joints and undo what I'm trying to help prevent. Hopefully these won't fall off. I mean, the ones I stuck to my RX480, none of those have fallen off, so I'm not too worried about that. Just that, you know, it's gonna really suck if these fall off and like fall onto a motherboard or something. Or worse, they fall onto the card itself, and yeah, that's probably gonna be a dead Radeon 9800 Pro. So now the fan. So we got to get this stock fan off of here first, which thankfully the screws are right in here, unlike some other cards of the day that would have the screws from the bottom. You can actually unscrew it from the top, which is very convenient. So this fan still works okay, but I think the biggest problem with it is that it really just does not move enough air. I think that's its biggest downfall. Especially as it ages, it's going to get louder too. The bearings are going to wear out. Probably spin slower too over time, which is just not great for the aging silicon. Now, unfortunately, this is not the R360 core. This is R350. The R360, I think, was the first one to add a thermal sensor to actually monitor temperatures. But R350 does not, which is part of the reason why these cards kill themselves, is that they don't know when to turn off from thermal stress. Yeah, so this was only 0.1 amp. So, yeah, I wouldn't trust putting the other fan, you know, adapting this plug to the other fan. You know, looking at it, really doesn't seem like there's a lot of metal here. But then again, you know, not like this was gonna help matters anyways. You know, you got this little fan moving air through all that metal, but now we got big fan moving air through all the metal, which that's just gonna be a much better solution. Besides, it's gonna blow some excess air off to the rest of the board. You know, it'll help maybe a little bit with the voltage regulation. So these aren't really the right screws. These are just like normal self-tapping fan screws, but they should be able to screw themselves into the metal okay. They don't really stick out of the fan all that much, but I think it'll be okay. So I think I'm gonna run the cord down under it. Of course, this will always have to be plugged into a motherboard or, you know, Molex adapter, which is probably the way I'm gonna go. Probably gonna go Molex adapter. This thing is surprisingly not that loud for how fast it spins. It probably spins at like 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. But yeah, this thing works okay. It's not super loud. I'm just gonna pre-tap the hole here. I think I pulled this off of an old socket 478 heatsink. So, makes sense why that would spin fast. You know, cool. Tame the beast of a Pentium 4. Now I'm hoping that as I'm screwing, I'm not gonna put too much pressure on one side and like lift up and destroy the paste, which means I'd have to redo it. I guess if that happens and I have to take it off, you know, if I feel the heatsink move up, I'd have to take it off anyways, and maybe I'll try putting the Chinese heatsink on it just for the heck of it, since I have to take it off anyways. But hopefully we did not create too much aluminum dust that could fall out and fall all over the card. You know, that's on there pretty good, actually. I don't think I felt the heatsink move at all. I guess we'll know if the card starts artifacting like crazy, but I think that's okay. Yeah, those clips I think held it in place pretty decently. Yeah, so there we go. It's only got 2 screws in it, but honestly, that's in there decently enough that I don't think I have to worry about this just falling off. Unless, of course, I rip it off, in which case that's going to be a lot worse. All right, let's go ahead and get this thing in the computer and test it out. All right, so let's get this thing in here. It is now like a 1.5 slot cooler. Even if I put that Chinese cooler on here, it would still end up being a multi-slot card now. For a second, I thought the clip on the AGP connector was gonna interfere with the RAM heatsink, but no, that didn't happen. We have unfortunately lost a PCI slot due to the thickness, but this is not the end of the world. Yeah, I know you can't see it very well. I really can't get a better angle of it. I lied, I can. It's called taking it off the tripod, but yeah, this is how it looks in there. That should work fine. I don't see any logical reason why this is a bad idea, but other than, you know, it's going to be a lot louder. Don't pay too much attention to the travesty that you're looking at here. This is the only power supply I have to be able to test this out with really quick, because I stole the power supply out of this machine for a different project. That thing right there, actually. But yeah, it's just enough to power the motherboard, the graphics card, and the main hard drive, because frankly, that's all we need. Go ahead here, turn this thing on, and hope that it's fine. Oh yeah, it's definitely blowing air. It's not spinning quite as fast as I thought it would. I wonder if the motherboard is controlling the fan speed down. Yeah, but it's definitely spinning in there. The card still works, at least. That's good. Heatsink is still getting a little bit warm, but that's to be expected. System fan speed, only 29,000 RPM. That's not quite what I want. So I think it unfortunately is controlling the fan speed based on the motherboard. But I can fix that really quick by getting a Molex adapter. Oh yeah, I can definitely feel the air moving off that now. Now the GPU fan's spinning nice and good. Surprising how much heat is coming off of it. So unfortunately, I don't have any way to test the temperature, really, other than load up a benchmark and pray that it doesn't burn itself up. I mean, this thing is moving so much more air than the stock fan. I don't see how this could possibly be worse than the original. So yeah, that's like, it's blowing some serious air out of those vents, where before it was like, it barely felt like anything was moving out of there. As for the RAM heat sinks are definitely getting a little bit warm, so that should help. I guess this is the moment of truth if we kill the card. Let's run 3D Marco 3. No artifacts, no artifacts. Well, that looks okay to me. I know the screen's flickering for you. I'd have to go in and change the refresh rate to fix that. Well, that's looking okay to me. You know, I mean, you gotta think this card survived for like several weeks of being messed around with the stock fan, no RAM heat sinks, in this enclosed case with the only fans being these. I know the case fan is currently unplugged, but you know, we're open air right now, so that doesn't really matter. It's definitely louder, but I can't really say it's any louder than the machine already was. I'm just astonished how much heat this thing can push off of it. Get that power cord out of the way so it doesn't get sucked into the fan. Yeah, wow, it's incredible how much heat moves off of this thing. Yeah, the stock fan definitely was not pushing that much airflow off of it before, that's for sure. Yeah, I think this little thing, had I left it on there, I think this probably would have doomed the card to eventually die, because, like, wow, the amount of heat coming off that heatsink is incredible with that fan. This thing, man, that heatsink, I never actually touched it when it was running, but man, that thing had to have been just, like, burning hot. Well, it's been running for the past, like, 15, 20 minutes, and, it seems to be okay to me. Yeah, there's a lot of heat coming off of this, so, yeah, I feel pretty glad that we're moving away from this thing. Would this still have been the better option? Probably it'd be quieter than this. It'd have more surface area too. Personally, this was the easy route compared to trying to mod this and fit it on there. And I mean, there's no artifacting, it hasn't crashed at all. It seems to be working perfectly fine, so I'm not really concerned about it. Yeah, so if you have a Radeon 9800 or similar card and you want to upgrade the heatsink, grab yourself a 70mm socket 478 heatsink. That'll probably do you just fine. I guess that's going to do it for this video, at least for now. I just took this thing out, and wow, is the heatsink hot. It's still a little concerning, to be honest. I don't know if... I'm really still unsure if this is a better option. Because, wow, seriously, the heat that this thing outputs is just insane. Granted, the TV tuner is also really hot. That's one aspect of this card that, unfortunate. The RAM heatsinks are definitely helping. Some of these are quite warm, so these capacitors up here are pretty warm as well. So I think I'm going to leave this as it is right now. I'm for sure never going back to the stock fan, because, wow, even with this fan, it still feels like it's running really hot. So I'm really starting to wonder if all the heat that machine used to make wasn't actually from the Pentium 4, because I felt off that heatsink from the Pentium 4. It didn't really feel that hot, so I think this thing was actually generating most of the heat, which is just... wow, okay. Yeah, this fan definitely helps. If you think that this is a better option, this doesn't have as much airflow, but it does have more surface area, but still a little bit worried about that base plate. I don't know. Give me your guys' opinions. Which should I stay with? Should I stick with this setup, or should I go to the Chinese cooler? I don't know, but at least for now, I think this is it's a pretty cool looking mod, in my opinion, because it looks like something that someone would have did back in the day. And personally speaking, I think this is probably the better option. Sure, the airflow probably isn't as optimized as the little fan, I guess, but this is just brute forcing its way through even these little tiny slits. That's just dramatically helping the cooling ability. You know, this is like probably 3-4 times the airflow, probably more like 3 times the airflow. So I think this is just got to be superior. Yeah, hopefully this card has a long, happy, healthy life ahead of it. Thank you guys for watching.